It's working. Thank you. Right, you see. All right. Hello, family. I'm going to send a quick text message. It was a text to jot down the number of cans that were brought in. How's everybody doing tonight? Good, good. Hope everybody is doing well. It is good to be back on a Wednesday night. Got a lot of people here. I also know there's a lot of people sick. There's a lot of stuff going around right now. So let's be mindful of people who are sick. Let's be praying for them. But I'm so glad that you're here tonight. Balcony, how y'all doing up there? Good. Let me hear one more time. Balcony, how you doing? That's better. Good. Good to see y'all. Hey, let's run over a few announcements. It is Wednesday, December 7th, and we are rolling. There's a lot going on, and January's about to be here, and it's about to get even crazier. So I'm looking forward to it. That number on the thermometer does not reflect necessarily the number of cans that have been brought in, but we just want to remind you that we are doing our Clash of Cans right now, so if you have cans, bring them. We're collecting cans for our food drive. A lot of our cans are over here, but we are a long way from our goal of 2,500. You have one more week to do it. It ends next Wednesday night. So you can see on the screen what happens when we hit the different benchmarks, but I don't think we're close to our huge number yet, but you'll get there. I believe in you. So anyway, and then also the winner of the individual challenge, whoever brings the most cans, is going to get a yes day with me and Chandler. So we look forward to whatever diabolical ideas you guys will come up with. I've already talked to someone that I'm a little nervous about winning. Holden LeSueur. All right. I think we're ready for our next slide. Let's talk about Dig Devo. I think Trent is the man for the job tonight. Trent, where are you?
I'm back here.
Go ahead.
All right, guys. This upcoming Monday, we're having our first middle school Monday, and me and Josh wanted to ramp it up a bit, so we're calling it Middle School Mayhem. So if you're in middle school, we really want to encourage you to come out to our Dig Devo. It's going to be a ton of fun. If you're in high school, we still want you to come. If you haven't been to a Dig Devo all year, we really want to encourage you to consider coming to this one because we're going to try and make it an awesome night. We're going to have dinner for y'all, and we're going to be having several speakers. We're going to be hearing from Asher Adcock, Cody Roselle, Hunter Suttles, Cody Roselle, Eli Kibbe, Spencer Hyde, and Mr. Adam Martin. So it's going to be an awesome night, a lot of opportunity to grow spiritually. And me and Josh, another side note, me and Josh have been working on a mystery scavenger hunt Grinch theme extravaganza. So we're hoping to make that a really fun night for you guys. So Middle School Mayhem next Monday. You hype? Oh yeah.
Let's go. Nice. Love it. All right, let's move on to Impact. Where are you, Becky or Caitlin? Whoever wants to.
Impact is going to be 6 to 7:30 at the Adcock. This past week we had a record of 19 people. So
Awesome.
we do that again. But another heads up is when we have this chapel from now on, it's going to be middle schoolers are invited. So keep an eye out. Middle school Mondays will be pretty awesome.
Awesome. So had a huge crowd at Impact this past week. Had a huge crowd at Dig this past week. Keep it up. That's great. And yeah, how much longer till like Christmas break? How many more days? Just a few, if anyone's counting. All right. We have our high school and middle school, our youth group Christmas party. This coming Sunday night after church, we will serve Demas's. It's going to be in this room right here. You're going to want to be here for that. Bring a homemade Christmas present and bring a dessert with you. That's going to be a lot of fun. That'll be this coming Sunday night after church in the chapel, so look forward to that. All right, what else we got? I think there's a few more things. Hey, this is exciting. On New Year's Eve, we are doing our New Year's bash, so we look forward to that. I say Eve because New Year's Day is on a Sunday, and we didn't want you guys to be exhausted after pulling a really late night. So we're going to do it on the Friday, Saturday, so December the 30th. And details are on the Encyclopedia Yeti, but that'll be a night of just awesomeness. So I'm looking forward to that coming very soon. Hey, congratulations, Friendship Christian School, for winning the state championship in football. Where are you, Chase Eeks? Are you here tonight?
Oh, yeah.
Anyway, excited for them, and I know Rachel Porter is one of the managers on that team, so congratulations to you, Rachel. Really cool. Good stuff. All right. All of the details that you need for whatever's coming up, you can find them at the Encyclopedia Eddie. Hey, there's not a slide for this yet, but we are looking forward to about a little over a month from now, one of our favorite events called EU is coming up. So high school students, something to look forward to there. And actually the return this year of the youth group, big old youth group supper. Remember that? We haven't done it in a while, but we're looking forward to that as well come January the 8th. So lots of good stuff coming down the pipe. All right, as we begin our class tonight, check this out.
I made my family disappear.
Kevin, you're completely helpless.
No, Kevin, you're what the French call les incompétents.
Kevin, I'm going to feed you to my tarantula.
Kevin, you are such a disease.
There are 50.
You little jerk.
I made my family disappear.
Who loves Home Alone? Man, it has got to be one of my favorite movies of all time. Not just Christmas, but one of my favorite movies of all time. I love Home Alone. I found some stuff that you might not know about Home Alone. How many of you think you've seen Home Alone at least 5 times? How many of you think you've seen it 10 times? 20 times? 30 times? You guys must love this movie. All right, so a lot of you are huge fans of the movie. I'm going to tell you some stuff about Home Alone that you might not know. Did you know Robert De Niro turned down the role of Harry? Oh, that would have been interesting. Instead of Joe Pesci playing Harry, it would have been Robert De Niro. They held a contest in 2019 where they were kind of hyping up the Home Sweet Home Alone movie that came out on Disney+. They held a contest to hype that up where you could win a stay in the original Home Alone house. So if you won the contest, you got to stay overnight in the original Home Alone house. Wouldn't that be awesome? That house, by the way, in 2012, that house sold for $1.585 million. It's estimated that the home's worth about $2 million today. So the next time it sells, we'll go up a whole lot more. There was a doctor, I thought this was so cool. There's a doctor called Dr. Ryan St. Clair, who he did a study based on the injuries that Marv and Harry sustained in the movie, and he wanted to see, like, okay, at what point would they have died, like in the actual movie, and like what would have been the extent of their injuries. And so, anyway, he wrote this long article about it, but we learned from that they would not have survived most of Kevin's traps. For example, the iron that lands on Marv's face would have caused a blowout fracture, leading to serious disfigurement and debilitating double vision if not repaired properly. And the blowtorch that caused, that hit Harry on the head, like that lit him up, would have caused the skin and bone tissue in Harry's skull to be so damaged and rotted that his skull bone would be essentially dying and would have likely required a transplant. Merry Christmas. How about the ornaments? Remember the ornaments in the movie where Marv steps through the house? That was actually made of candy, so that it wasn't actual glass. And he actually used a rubber, foot that went over his foot, so he was just to be extra careful not to get hurt. By the way, that was the least lethal form of torture that Kevin set for him. At one point, Kevin places a tarantula on Marv's face. Do you remember that? And it was, of course, it was a real spider. Daniel Stern, the actor, agreed to do it for one take. Okay, but here's what you may not know: he didn't want to frighten the spider. And so when he put it on his face, he just mimed that he was screaming. And then later on, they added in the scream, which, by the way, is just a great scream. I wanted you to just see it. Just the actual scream. Such a good scream in the movie.
Hurry, get up, give me a hand! Ow! I got him!
They edited this
Help me, get up!
Such a good scream. Anyway, so I thought I love Home Alone, and you know, it being the time of year where it feels like you can watch it anytime you want to. It's always on TV. I thought it would be good tonight to just take a moment and look at some of the things that are in this movie that are really beautiful truths if we take just a minute and look at them through the lenses of God's Word. So tonight I want to give you 5 life lessons from Home Alone. I appreciate Caitlin doing these again for us tonight. If anybody didn't get one of these, raise your hand, and I bet Mike Dominski will pass them out. Can you get me? All right, so Mike's going to pass these out. Anyway, we'll get these going around. You can cheat off your neighbor's paper if you miss one. I'm going to go ahead and get started. Number 1, something we learned from this movie, being alone isn't nearly as good as advertised. Being alone isn't nearly as good as advertised. Sure, there's that great moment that we saw where Kevin realizes he really believes he made his family disappear, and he's going crazy and run around. But that's kind of a short-lived moment. It doesn't take long before he realizes how terrible that it is. Can you think of a time where you saw something advertised on TV or maybe online or at a movie, and when you got it or when you experienced it or when you saw it, it was not at all what it was advertised to be? Can you think of a time where you saw something and in reality it wasn't as advertised? Can somebody give me an example? Ella's thinking about it. What's running through your mind? Something that wasn't as good as advertised. Do what? Oh, you were raising hands for that. Okay. All right, somebody else. When you saw something and it wasn't nearly as good as advertised. Zach? Yeah. Oh, really? An advent calendar that was just kind of busted. It didn't work very well. All right, Mason. That's such a good answer. He said every single McDonald's cheeseburger. When you're watching it on the TV and then you open up that little bag, it doesn't look anything. That's a really good one. What about you? Yeah, food. Yeah, food always looks, they make it look real pretty and then you get the real thing. Yeah, it's just not the same. What about it, Blake?
So we decided to get it one year. And when we got it, it didn't look anything like it was on a TV.
So
It was the wrong
disappointing.
box, and it didn't even have like anything in it.
Oh,
It did. When I say it didn't have anything in it, it didn't have anything like the advertised.
gotcha. Different than it was on the commercial. Silas. The Halo show that just came out, does anyone relate to what Silas is talking about? Okay, not as good as advertised. How about, let me share, oh, you got one more? Go ahead. Cats. Cats. Hunter, what were you thinking it was going to be?
Good.
Just good. Anything better than that? All right. Let me give you one that really I think speaks to my generation, and I'd be curious to see if any of y'all know what this is. But when I was probably 7 or 8, Nintendo came out with something called the Power Glove. Does anybody know what that is? Anybody ever seen the Power Glove? All right, so the Power Glove was supposed to be like the regular Nintendo controller, but you could do everything that the controller would do with your hand, all right? And it was supposed to be this like awesome thing. And I remember when you got it, or you maybe had a friend who had it, and you got to try it out, it did not work. It was terrible. It was a terrible piece of machinery, and like you would have to punch like really hard to get it to do anything to respond, and it was just awful. I did find it looks like it's really cool ahead of its time. Someone like modified it and made it look a lot cooler than it actually is. But yeah, that was something that was not at all as good as it was advertised to be. Being alone is not as good as Kevin thought it was going to be. Being alone is pretty terrible. Being alone is the worst. In Matthew chapter 26, verses 47 through 56, I want to read, it's about 10 verses here, but I want to read this because I want you to see what's going on in this story, and then I want you to see how the story ends, okay? Matthew 26, starting in verse 47, while he was still speaking, Judas came, one of the 12, and with him a great crowd with swords and clubs from the chief priest and elders of the people. Now the betrayer had given them a sign, saying, "The one I will kiss is the man. Seize him." And he came up to Jesus at once and said, "Greetings, Rabbi," and kissed him. Jesus said to him, "Friend, do what you came to do." And they came up and laid hands on Jesus and seized him. And behold, one of those who were with Jesus stretched out his hand and drew his sword and struck the servant of the high priest and cut off his ear. Then Jesus said to him, "Put your sword back into its place, for all who take the sword will perish by the sword. Do you not think that I can appeal to my Father, and he will at once send me more than 12 legions of angels? But how then should the Scriptures be fulfilled, that it must be so?" At that hour Jesus said to the crowds, "Have you come out as against a robber, with swords and clubs to capture me? Day after day I sat in the temple teaching, and you did not seize me. But all this has taken place that the Scriptures of the prophets might be fulfilled." Then all the disciples left him and fled. So what's happening in this story? This is a big moment in the life of Christ. What happens on this night? You remember? He is handed over and he's killed on a cross. He's crucified this night. And so kind of the biggest moment of Jesus' life, the biggest night, the biggest moment of his life, here he is. And how does this part of the story end? Everybody that had been following him around, what happens? They turn tail and run. They flee. And now Jesus is alone. Now, Jesus is divine, but Jesus is also human, right? How do you think Jesus felt in this moment? How do you think he felt when everybody that he was close with left? All right, stabbed in the back. What else? Alone. Other thoughts? Betrayed. Yeah, he'd just been betrayed, right, Laura? Abandoned. Any other thoughts? Yeah. Afraid. Maybe so. Maybe so. So all these emotions must be running through him, and man, at a time of need, wouldn't it have been great to have like maybe one disciple that would have stuck around? But instead, Jesus is left alone. Being alone is not nearly as good as advertised. We sing a song sometimes in church called "Where No One Stands Alone." And the lyrics in the second verse say, "Like a king I may live in a palace so tall with great riches to call my own, but I don't know a thing in the whole wide world that's worse than being alone." You can have it all, but if you don't have someone to share it with, if you're by yourself, it really is a lonely, lonely feeling. Psalm 69 verse 20 says, "Reproaches have broken my heart so that I am in despair. I looked for pity, but there was none, and for comforters, but I found none." We weren't made to walk alone. A vacation is nice, but we like them because they're temporary. We don't like to experience loneliness like in a long-term way, right? Number two, the second takeaway, I think, from this movie, this classic, is you are never truly alone. You're never truly alone. In the movie, there comes a point, I hope this doesn't spoil it for anybody, but there comes a point where he actually befriends someone that he thinks at first is a bad guy, right? He actually makes friends, or if it's Home Alone 2, the pigeon lady, right? He actually makes friends with them, and he realizes he's not alone entirely. And we need to remember that even in our darkest hour, in our time of need, we are truly never alone. Hebrews 13 verse 5, we read, God says, "I will never leave you nor forsake you." In Psalm 23 verse 4, it says, "Even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for you are with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me." We are never truly alone. The third thing that I think we can take away from this really great movie is that sometimes we're wrong. Actually, not sometimes. A lot of times we're wrong about people. Do you remember I mentioned a minute ago the kind of the creepy old neighbor that Kevin had? Old man, remember his name? Old man Marley. What do they call? Don't they have a nickname for him? The shoveler of. can't remember. It's like the shoveler of 2nd Avenue, or I can't remember what they call him. But anyway, he's got this like nickname because Buzz like tells him this weird story about how he like shovels the bodies and puts them in his trash can or whatever. But we realized that Kevin was wrong about him. Have you ever been wrong about somebody? Like when you first met them, you thought they were a certain way, and then when you got to know them, you realized you were completely wrong. Who can tell us a time like that? Who can tell us about a time where you met somebody and you were totally wrong about them? Don't use their name, but can you think of a time where that happened? Yeah. Oh, man, so sometimes it goes the other way. You think that this person's your friend, but when you really get to know them, they're kind of a fake. They can be kind of a phony. Yeah. Yeah. She's crazy. Yeah, that happens. I remember one of my very best friends from high school, when I first met him, he got on my nerves so much. Y'all ever met somebody like that? They just got on your nerves, and then they turn out to be one of your close friends. Isn't that weird how that happens? Yeah. Isn't that cool? I love when we're way wrong about somebody and it ends up being just such a blessing in disguise. People were wrong about Zacchaeus. He was a tax collector and he was hated. He was a short guy, right? And Jesus saw him, met him, and said, hey, I'm coming to your house today. So what happened? Jesus took the time to get to know somebody that other people thought they knew enough about. Jesus took the time to get to know him. And what we learn about Zacchaeus is that people were wrong about him. He was a man that had a bad reputation, but he had a good heart. And in that story, he ends up saying, if I've wronged anybody, I'm going to make it right. In Luke 19, 8 through 10, we read this. Zacchaeus stood and said to the Lord, behold, Lord, the half of my goods I give to the poor, and if I have defrauded anyone of anything, I restore it fourfold. And Jesus said to him, today salvation has come to this house, since he also is a son of Abraham. For the Son of Man came to seek and save the lost. We can be so quick to judge people. We can be so quick to label people. Well, they've got money, so they don't know what it's like to struggle. Or she dresses that way, so she must be like this. Or they're from that country, therefore that's how they are. All right? We can be so wrong. He drives that kind of car. She listens to this kind of music. They dress in all black, so fill in the blank. We can get so quick to label people, but we've got to remember that what's underneath the makeup and what's underneath the mask or what people, whatever facade people put up or whatever clothes they're wearing, we got to remember that when you get to the surface or when you get underneath the surface, people are just that. They're people, right? And they're really not that different than you and I. 1 Samuel 16 verse 7 says, for the Lord sees not as man sees. Man looks on the outward appearance, but the Lord looks at the heart. Tonight I want to ask you for just a minute to consider something. Could there be someone that you're wrong about? Could there be someone right now that you are wrong about? Maybe you've thought that they are a certain way, and maybe it's time to give them a second chance. You know, sometimes we label people as snobs, but in reality, we're just as snobby as they are because we haven't taken the time to actually speak to them, right? Give people a second chance. Sometimes we're wrong about people. Number four, sometimes what you want isn't really what you want. Kevin thought he wanted his family to disappear. Remember when Kevin says this? I don't want a family. I don't want any family. I don't want to see you guys ever again. Remember what the mom says? Say it again, and maybe it'll happen. So he does. I hope I never have to see you jerks again. That's one of those moments in my house when we watch it where the kids go, oh, like they can't believe he says that to his parents. Matthew 16, verses 21 through 23. From that time, Jesus began to show his disciples that he must go to Jerusalem and suffer many things from the elders and chief priests and scribes and be killed and on the third day be raised. And Peter took him aside and began to rebuke him, saying, far be it from you, Lord, this shall never happen to you. Let's call time out here. We're talking about how sometimes the thing we want is not necessarily the best thing. All right, and so here's Peter listening to Jesus talk about God's plan. And what is the plan? Well, one day Jesus is going to be delivered over to be crucified. One day he's going to be taken away from them. The guy that the apostles spent all their time with is going to be removed from them. All right? And what's Peter decide? Lord, you're talking crazy. Don't talk like that. This can never happen. Watch what Jesus says. But he turned and said to Peter, "Get behind me, Satan. You are a hindrance to me, for you are not setting your mind on the things of God, but on the things of man." You know, from time to time, we need to be reminded that God has a better plan than we do. Sometimes the things we want to do not line up with His plan. You know, maybe that girl or that guy that we've been praying, God, please let her fall in love with me, or please bring us together, or help her to see how great of a person I am. You know, sometimes those prayers, God doesn't answer them the way we want. And it sounds like I'm quoting a Garth Brooks song here. But sometimes it's better that God didn't answer the prayer that we asked for, and He answered it in a different way. Sometimes the thing that I want isn't what I need at all. I'm thankful for the times that God has denied me foolish requests. Romans 26 through 28 says this. How cool is this? This is a passage about how the Spirit kind of fills in the blank for us. It helps us where we fall short with our words. It says, "Likewise, the Spirit helps us in our weaknesses, for we do not know what to pray for as we ought, but the Spirit Himself intercedes for us with groanings too deep for words. And He who searches hearts knows what is the mind of the Spirit, because the Spirit intercedes for the saints according to the will of God. And we know that for those who love God, all things work together for good, for those who are called according to His purpose." The last thing that I want us to notice and take away from our time tonight is there's really, truly nothing like having a family. And that's really one of the big messages of the movie, isn't it? There's really nothing quite like having a family. Sure, sometimes they eat all your cheese pizza, right? And sometimes they get on your nerves and they say things like, "Look what you did, you little jerk." Right? Sometimes our families know how to push our buttons, but at the end of the day, they're still our family. At the end of the day, they're still your family. And life's too short to hold grudges, and life is better lived when you have a family who loves you back. God's family is the same way, isn't it? Sometimes we get on each other's nerves. Sometimes we hurt each other. Sometimes we say the wrong thing. Sometimes we fight with each other. Sometimes we hurt each other deeply. But we need to move past the drama, let things go, and move on. Y'all know what autoimmune diseases are? You've heard of that before. Autoimmune diseases are diseases that cause the body to attack itself. That's really messed up. Instead of fighting the diseases outside the body begins to turn on itself and literally starts to kill itself. Think about how messed up it is when we do that in the body of Christ. In 1 Corinthians 12, we read about this idea of the body working together. And in verse 25, it talks about how there's not supposed to be a schism or divisions or like bad things in the body, but the members should have the same care for one another. We're not supposed to be fighting each other. Verse 26, "And if one member suffers, all the members suffer with it. Or if one member is honored, all the members rejoice with it." We've got an enemy that's fighting against the body, and it makes no sense for the body or for Christians to attack itself. Let's pray, and then we'll go to cocoons. Father, thank you so much that we could be here this evening and be reminded of some things that are simple but beautiful. We know that we need you. We know that we're never alone. We know that we've got a family. We know sometimes we're wrong about other people, but help us to not judge wrongly, but to see people the way Jesus did and to give people our love and attention and our care. Bless us tonight as we go to our cocoons. Thank you so much for all of the students who are here tonight, for all of the leaders who make it a sacrifice every week to serve and to serve in this beautiful way. I'm thankful for them. Lord, help us to do your will. Help us to be the family you've called us to be. In Jesus' name, amen. Thank you.